that's what makes it such a great show on the CW and spinoff for the All American franchise.
Yeah, they keep things moving, but they let it breathe. And I think that's a really important balance that not a lot of shows can do.
I know. And this is how we're going to transition into The Flash, because one show that cannot do it is The Flash. But you know what, Michael? I'm sure you have positives. So I'm going to let you start.
I was going to say, y'all set me up with that one because this is the one week I have good things to say about it. Okay. I'm in two minds about it, but I'm going to keep it short because I don't want to desecrate the positivity that I have here. But on one hand, I did love the episode. We didn't talk about it last week, but I did mention that I loved the episode, which was episode 11, I believe, where Caitlin was trying to save Ronnie. And it turns out in the end that she was wrong. It wasn't Ronnie. The issue with it was the Team Flash was all like, yeah, let's kill Ronnie, lol, let's do it. I was like, wow, what a plot device. I don't think Barry would have been so dead set on let's kill him, but he had to reach that decision within 40 minutes. But again, the conventions of television will let it slide. But anyway, it was nice to see Caitlin get a starring role that actually wasn't stupid. It was actually a really serious one, tied to her character. She made some logical decisions. She made some illogical decisions that were driven by love. So that was totally understandable. Her and Frost actually working together instead of working against each other was a nice twist. Frost standing in a crime scene at the end and being able to do something and not getting blown away by a nearby explosion that had nothing to do with her was nice to say. Every character felt like they were behaving in character except maybe Barry and the Team Flash people who was like, let's kill Ronnie. But all in all, that's episode to me, and maybe it's music, maybe it's the Firestorm music, but all in all, that episode felt very like season 1 to me. And that is a positive. If I'm doing ups and downs here, I didn't expect to give the Caitlin half of the episode the up because that character's been used in some measly storylines recently, some really bad storylines, but that hit all the beats it was supposed to. That was a great storyline and it made me quite emotional because I loved the Caitlin and Ronnie arc in season 1 and I feel like Caitlin's been lost for a storyline for the last 7 years. So it was so nice to see her have something to do. So yeah, tick box for me, that's great. My issue with the episode came from the Iris end of it, and I did not want to say that because you know how I feel about Iris. She's my other favorite character on the show. But again, the whole cutting back to her time sickness thing, you have to stay here, but never fully explaining why you have to stay here. Let's wipe you out of existence halfway through the episode, but like give the rest of the cast 30 minutes before they tell Barry about it because he's busy in a different arc. I'm just over the whole time sickness thing. I've wanted it to go somewhere for so long and they've just danced around it. So I'm glad it only had 2 or 3 scenes in this episode because it's just what they're doing with it is so bad. And I want it more for Iris than that. I want it more for the storyline for that. If it was the leading story of the season, if it had given them more attention, that would have been great. Maybe I would have been more invested, but it's getting hard to get invested because it keeps getting treated like a background story. But I know you'll have more thoughts on that. So I'm going to leave that one to you. All in all, I really liked the episode. I'm glad it went down the Firestorm route. Can I just say the Deathstorm looks terrifying and it's one of the better CGI villains they've gone for. The fact that Robbie Amell will now be playing a villainous version of the character when he comes back, but they're probably going to use the CGI one for the couple of episodes because he's not contracted for that many episodes. Either way, Deathstorm tied to a main character, exquisite. I hope this is good. I'm really excited to see where it goes. I'm very excited about the story and I'm very excited about the Flash. I don't mind that we're not going to see the time sickness story for the next few episodes because I'm over it now. They, as far as I'm concerned, they failed with it. I hope they do better because Iris deserves better. I'm not saying that as an Iris hater. I'm saying that as an Iris fan. She deserves better than the story. There's so much more they could have done with her and it's getting bland because that cliffhanger they had, that where she did the full-on Thanos, snapped the woman out of existence, was really exciting. No follow-up. What was the point? But let's just say the Caitlin stuff, brilliant. The Ronnie stuff, brilliant. The Frost stuff, brilliant. If that was just on its own in the episode, I would have given it a 9. But because I have mixed thoughts, I'll take the score down to an 8. But that's my favorite episode of The Flash since the mid-season premiere. So the fact they were able to do that's impressive. So I'll give them the win, and I'm going to stop ranting and let you do it instead.
Okay. You know what, Michael? We actually are on the same page
Yes.
for everything. I too would actually give the episode a 9 if they had cut the Iris pieces out. Had it just if they had just let it be a Caitlin episode,
Mhm.
it would have been one of the better episodes of the season. Because they did not do that, and I'm assuming it's because they let Iris have a Thanos moment, and then he needed to get back to it, but also wanted to focus on Caitlin. They decided to pigeonhole her into an episode that clearly didn't need her, and it didn't need her because they needed to put all their focus on Central City.
Mhm.
Because I thought it was, why does it seem like they can only really do well with Caitlin romantically when they bring up Ronnie?
Mhm.
Anybody else, it's not that great. But when it's her and him, it's fantastic. And while I didn't like the shots they were taking at West Allen in terms of like if it was Iris, you would understand. I did like all the character development that they did with her, the character exploration, the look back into her past with Ronnie. I even loved when she had to break up with Marcus, but she wouldn't break up with Marcus, and he had to like, I know you're breaking up with me, just say it. The fact that that man quoted Plato to her and then went basically was like, get some healing. Like, that was so funny. I was like, I know this is, I mean, it was great acting from the actor, but he was also like, I don't quite believe that your husband was resurrected.
Yeah.
So what you need is therapy. If I'm going to say it very, very nicely, so you can get some therapy. I like that Snow was on Caitlin's side. I even like the Allegra and Chester bits. I thought the conversation about what knowledge should be out there and which knowledge shouldn't be was amazing for them too. I even kind of felt a little bit of a spark. I was like, okay, I can see it. I don't want to see it all the time, but for here, it was good. But as far as Iris, Michael didn't feel like she was just there to get yelled at and then disappear. Because that's what it
Yeah,
felt like.
that's totally it. It felt like, oh dear, we've contracted Candice Patton for so many episodes and we have to write her out of 4. How can we stick her into this one? And like, well, if you didn't want to write her out of 4, you wouldn't be in this issue, would you? But the problem is they don't know what to do with the character because it's supposed to be the main story and they're not treating it like the main story. So they're constantly writing her into the background, writing her out. In this episode, they've apparently written her out of existence. I'm like, what do you want to do with Iris? I'm
They
tired.
know.
Exactly. I'm tired of ranting about it because I'm also tired of saying the character deserves so much better. It's just like we've been here before. I want to focus on the positives because that was personally for me, that episode pulled on the emotional chords in a way that very few episodes of The Flash has. I will hold on to it because it reminded me of what the show was like for season 1, but that doesn't mean that there weren't a lot of season 8 like issues in it, and all of them revolved around Iris.
They did. And I just don't understand. If you tell us that her time sickness is supposed to be the through line for season 8, I expect it to be the through line for season 8. She literally, like, they didn't even really do much with what happened with Tanya. It was all big emotion. Tanya, of course, after her mom gets snapped out of existence, would she slow down to sort of recognize what's going on with Iris? No, that's totally understandable. She's also adolescent, and that frontal lobe is not fully fused, and so she was not slowing down to even ask any questions. She just decides to grab her and disappear. I think the only aspect of that, not Tanya disappearing her, but the only aspect of the Iris parts of the episode that I liked was that Sue was ready to like martial arts her way through like making Tanya back off from Iris. It's very rare to see someone besides Barry or Joe ready to throw down in order to protect Iris.
I have to say, that's my favorite thing about this story because it's kind of felt like it's just been stuck in the last few episodes and there's only a moment of brilliance, like Iris recounting her relationship with her mother. That was fantastic. But the one thing they've gotten right throughout this very confusing arc, the one thing they've got right is the Iris and Sue friendship. That kind of came out of nowhere, but I really, really like it and I hope it carries through.
So do I. Oh, by the way, Reed, just to give you some context to what happened with Iris. So she's freaking out. Sue decides to grab the phone to call Barry. The phone disintegrates, so she can't call Barry, and Sue and Barry aren't close enough for her to have his number in her own cell phone. So when Iris gets disappeared, she's got to go back to Central City to knock on his door to let him know that his wife is gone. Mind you, that's in the last minute of the show, like 2 minutes, I don't know, in the last few minutes of the show. So like all they have time for is for her to go, Barry, Iris is gone, and for Grant to have a moment of shock and horror. End. that was it. That's the whole, like, he didn't know that his wife was going through all that in Coast City. He spent the entire episode worried about something else, only for them to reinsert some care for his wife into the end of the episode. When I tell you it feels like these two aren't married right now, it's because of writing choices like this. Though he did try to call her. So.
Hearing about this show out of context is wild, because every time you guys talk about it, it sounds like 4 different shows. I can't like grasp what the tone is. And also there's always like, there's another character that I've never heard of. Like, I don't think I've ever heard of Sue. I don't know who that is. And what was I was gonna say something else. And it sounds like you guys barely talk about the lead of the show. It sounds like he's not in the show.
Okay, see, you know what? The Flash fans would be applauding you right now, because that is the main discourse on Twitter right now. It's that it's called The Flash, but it's more like Team Flash featuring Barry Allen. I don't think, and Michael maybe be able to speak to this better, I don't think Barry has a storyline this season at all.
That's actually an excellent point. I never thought of it like that, but I do agree with Sabrina. That's an excellent perception read. It's literally what everybody thinks about the show. It's that we're getting tired of Barry is front and center all the time, but Barry is not doing anything in relation to Barry. It's always about somebody else. And we've seen on these shows over the previous seasons, I think Supergirl's final season was it made that mistake. When the arc is not respective to the main character, why are we watching it through their eyes? It just doesn't make sense. But that's not to say we don't want to watch it through his eyes. It's just that Barry needs more to do. And yes, I would agree. There's too much Team Flash. There's too much. What does this character think about? I do not care. It just, there's just too much of these new characters that were introduced are fun, but they're starting to be treated like main characters at the expense of the show. I do appreciate that they've started focusing on the original supporting characters by giving Caitlin and Iris their own arcs throughout. But it would be nice if every once in a while we actually saw what Barry thought of the situation, instead of being pointed in this direction, or like, let's kill Rana, let's stop Frost from doing that. Just, these are decisions I don't feel like he would be making, and he just comes across as fed up in every episode because the story's not about him. And it could do with being about him. But unfortunately, again, I do not want to end my positive rant on a negative, but that poster that was just released, slightly impressive artwork as it is, does not fill me full of confidence for the direction of the show, because it feels like we're going more in the Team Flash direction, and that's not what the show needs right now.
It's not. But okay, to end on a positive.
Yes, please do.
I would say if we were to rank the episodes outside of the Armageddon crossover for season 8. As far as if we would ignore the Iris stuff, it's probably for me the second out of the mid-season premiere. And that's even me loving the storyline with Iris being in Coast City, the storyline they set up in that one episode. I think writing wise, this is the better episode as far as all the way through, with exception to the Iris bits. So it would be number 2 for me, which is funny because, I don't really, Caitlin and I and Killer Frost and I, we don't see for each other, but I do like the story that they told for her in this episode. So it's number 2 for me.
That's a nice way to end it. And I would agree. I might personally, because of how much I love season 1, maybe pump that into my favorite episode since it came back, because the writing for Caitlin was so strong and it hasn't been in recent weeks. So yeah, I feel like top 2 for both of us. That's a solid episode all in all.